Hello, everyone. I'm going to do another one of these little short videos, little catch-up videos that seem to be going a little bit further than my usual, output. And I think it's a useful way of getting some of the big scandals that are out there in plain sight, in front of people in a kind of quick, absorbable way. So today I'm going to talk about Morgan Page. This is Morgan Page here in a piece I earlier wrote about this. I haven't prepared my comments this time, but I'm going to read from this article. This is Morgan Page, who is a part of Stonewall, and is probably one of the best kind of illustrations of why the LGB alliance needed to come about. Stonewall's betrayal of lesbians is most apparent in their working with this man. This is going to be so fiddly. StreamYard doesn't have a very natural way of going between screenshots, but anyway, the big thing that Morgan Page is responsible for is the first thing that got him into controversy was a workshop called Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling. Now, the title alone is a scandal, because what the cotton ceiling is the word that trans women have for lesbians who do not want to have sex with them. The cotton refers to the cotton of their panties. So it's a disgusting phrase. It's completely about coercion. It's completely about gaslighting. And Morgan Page not only does it, but he embraces it to such an extent that he called his workshop for Planned Parenthood. Hold on a second, let me find it. So fiddly. I'm so sorry, everyone. Yeah, here we go. He called it Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling. Overcoming the cotton ceiling. Okay? Think about what that means. Breaking down sexual barriers for queer trans women with Morgan M. Page. Queer trans women is just another way of saying men. So this is a class that's all about overcoming women's sexual boundaries. Let me read it. Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling will explore the sexual barriers queer trans men face within the broader queer women's communities. Broader queer women's communities means lesbians. Through group discussions and the hands-on creation of visual representations of those barriers. I kind of dread to think what that means, but I bet it involves looking at porn for reasons that I will come back to. Participants will work together to identify barriers, strategize, and this is the key phrase, strategize ways to overcome them. Strategize ways to overcome them and build community. So this is a community of rapists. Okay, that's the community that Morgan Page was trying to build here. And then the last sentence is also quite revealing. Open to all trans women and MAAB genderqueer folks. Folks is my favorite word. Trans rights activists use folks all the time, and their British kind of counterparts use it all the time. It's hilarious. It's another example of the Americanization of the English language. Folks, but anyway, MAAB genderqueer folks is just another way of saying men. It means male assigned at birth. So what they've said is open to all men and men. Right? So basically, this is a class that teaches men how to gaslight, coerce, trick lesbians into sex. And we saw the results of that recently with the BBC article, which Owen Jones, the shameful Vichy gay, did his best to dismiss when it came out, trying to argue about the numbers and, all this stuff. But, even one is too many, Owen. One is too many lesbians coerced into sex by this kind of gaslighting nonsense. Now, the other reason Morgan Page came into my view was I saw an interview with Benjamin Boyce did with Benji, who's a young detransitioner in Canada. And Benji, through kind of the best luck there is, not for her, but for us, went to his class. And whenever I hear the words LGBT class or support group or anything like that, I always think of Morgan Page, Benji's experience at Morgan Page's one. Let me remove this. So let me read out. These are the words of Benji, who is a detransitioner. So she is a woman who briefly identified as man, and she went to this LGBT group that was helmed by Morgan Page. Benji says, Morgan Page, I don't know if you know who she is or he is a trans woman, but they had a workshop at Planned Parenthood Toronto about overcoming the cotton ceiling, which is basically like a pickup artisty thing for trans women to hook up with lesbians. This was in 2012. I didn't hear about it until after I left the trans community, and I didn't realize that was the person who had been leading my trans youth group for 3 years. In the youth group, it was kind of like Tumblr come alive. We discussed erotic fan fiction. We discussed like specific techniques for doing specific sexual acts. You discussed like kinky stuff. We talked about porn. And the most disturbing thing was there was always less than 4 trans women, remember, these are young girls, and they were all under the age of 18. And there were always more than like 5 trans women or non-binary males, so again, we're talking about men, who were all over the age of 20. So the power dynamic in the room was always very off. Sometimes Morgan would turn to us and be like, oh, was this cool with you guys? But it's like, if it's not cool with one of us and we're younger and we're sitting at a big table, we're not going to tell everybody to stop talking, especially when you consider this is an insecure teenage female, basically. It was like Tumblr was becoming real life for me. Like people were actually telling me like, oh, you're a trans misogynist for these reasons to my face. One of my most memorable experiences was my trans friend was 15. This trans guy and I was 16. Oh, sorry. My trans friend was 15, a trans man, and I was 16. And we were talking to this trans woman who was like 25, and she called herself a lesbian. And we were walking down the street to McDonald's after the trans youth group or something. And she explained to us how we exhibit trans misogyny and how we need to learn to listen and support trans women more. And I was like, this person has access to hormones. This person has a good full-time job with a pension. This person, their living situation is under their control. Both of us are like closeted, living at home with eating disorders and mental health issues that are untreated. And they're telling us we have privilege and we need to be quiet and listen to their stories more. This is another great example of how third wave feminism, along with that incredible video yesterday of the woman who had been violated at Primark, how it kind of gaslights young women into blaming their own perfectly reasonable, boundaries, blaming them for defending them, blaming them for standing up for themselves, trying to keep them down even before they've spoken up. That's what this person was doing here. Benji goes on to say, it's like at the time I was totally drinking the Kool-Aid, but the thing about telling me to be quiet, I was never really okay with that. And also, like I said, I wasn't aware of the cotton ceiling at that time. But as soon as I became aware of the situation, I was totally not okay with that either. Benjamin says, it sounds like this is the worst fear of, a conservative person thinking, well, this is just a group for grooming. Benji says, that's basically what it is. I once knew a 14-year-old trans man who was in a relationship with a 25-year-old trans woman. And the trans woman was the dom and the trans man was the sub. So what you have is a 25-year-old male who has like a sub, but they're a 14-year-old girl. What is that? That's pedophilia. Like, what is that? That's sexual abuse. But for some reason in the trans community, because the younger one is considered to be a man, it's fine. Or because it's like kinky and we're in a sex positive environment, it's unquestionable. So there would be us trans men who were like under the age of 18, all of us probably under the age of 16 during this story. And there were these trans women who were in their 40s, and they came in and they were literally hitting on us. They were being very explicit and very sexual about our bodies. And it's like, we have dysphoria. We came to here to talk about our dysphoria or trans stuff. And they're talking about, like, I don't know what, I don't want to say on camera, but very explicit things. And they didn't want to kick them out. And here's a key part. They didn't want to tell them to stop. They just kept on changing subjects. And I was shocked, because this was supposed to be a place for young people to come and explore and be safe. What the hell is that? That's not safe. That's not a good environment for exploration. The only time they were ever kicked out, Morgan was away, and this trans man filled in for her. And it's really telling to me that the only time that these predators were ever kicked out was when a trans man was in charge. So a female person who could relate to the females in the room being objectified. Okay? Now, here's my question. Why isn't that a much bigger scandal? You know? Why is Morgan Page, and this is the most shocking part of it all, and this is why the LGBT Alliance had to exist, because Morgan Page and Stonewall are so secure in the fact that no one will ever challenge them or challenge the fact that they have this rapist, this man who talks about overcoming women's boundaries on their page still. Morgan Page is still on Stonewall's website. They're so arrogant that they have put this guy who literally had a class called Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling, and they literally put the guy on their website. That is how much Stonewall hates lesbians. That is why the LGBT Alliance exists. Not because it's a hate group, but because the hate group formed within Stonewall. And it's not, I would say it's not a hate group, it's a rape group, right? Let's remember Nancy Kelly said that lesbians could be guilty of sexual racism. Why is Nancy Kelly still head of a gay charity after saying that? Why is she head of a gay charity when she has this abusive person on her website? We should all, do everything we can to support the LGBT Alliance, because Stonewall has become poisonous and poisoned from the inside. And Morgan Page is a major reason why that is so. So anyway, I'll leave you with him, and I'll say goodbye. Thank you.